And for our final segment for a Sunday, our extra special, we'll be addressing a critical and sensitive issue affecting many lives: sexual abuse and domestic violence. Understanding these issues and knowing the resources available for victims is crucial for creating a safer community. Now, sexual abuse and domestic violence are pervasive problems that affect individuals regardless of age, gender, or background. They can have long-lasting impacts on victims and even their families as well.
And so today, we aim to shed light on these issues and provide valuable information on how to seek help and support. And so to help us to do this, we have a special guest, the Executive Secretary of the Lagos State Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency, Titilola Vivour-Adeniyi. And she joins us live via video chat. Welcome, and thank you so much for joining us today on the show.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. Let's get started, shall we? And just start with, the scope of sexual abuse and domestic violence in Lagos State. Give us a bit of understanding as to, the stats you're seeing at your agency.
Thank you. So over the years, we've seen an increase in formal and informal reporting of cases. When we started in 2014, we attended to 40 cases a month. But as at last year, October, we have hit an average of 330 cases monthly. These are new cases that are being reported. The youngest survivor we've attended to was a 7-month-old baby, and the oldest was an 85-year-old grandma. And we have seen the high, the mighty, the impoverished, middle class. And it just speaks to the fact that sexual and gender-based violence truly is not a respecter of age, class, or creed. Indeed, anybody can be a victim or a survivor of this vicious menace.
Well, I'd like to ask if there are signs one could look out for in people who might be experiencing sexual abuse or domestic violence.
So typically, let me start with if you think or you suspect that a child is being abused. Typically, there's a change in behavior. And I think it's important for us as parents, caregivers, or just, good Samaritans, mandated reporters. When we notice a change in behavior in a child, and it can be anything, perhaps a child was the life of the party, very outgoing, all of a sudden the child is withdrawn, the child is apprehensive of a particular person, it can be an adult male or an adult female, or even a peer, because let's not forget that we have seen the unfortunate trend of child-to-child abuse. So changing behavior, apprehensive of a particular person or a location, or the child is walking funny. We have a lot of survivors that, a lot of mothers or fathers that report incidents of child sexual abuse. And the way they found out was maybe when they were giving the child a bath. And, they were trying to wash the genital areas and the child was very uncomfortable. And upon, checking, they found out that there was hyperemia, there was redness and all of that. So I think the main thing is for us for our index of suspicion to be high. I'm not saying that we should be paranoid, but it's important for us to really practice hands-on parenting. And yeah, so those are some of the signs. For DV, again, change in behavior, part of what the abuser does is to isolate the survivor from their support system. And so you have this friend, for instance, that is a socialite, and all of a sudden you're not hearing from the friend. It doesn't necessarily mean that he or she is experiencing abuse, but there should be an interest to find out why has this person, become withdrawn all of a sudden.
Right.
And okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I hate to cut you, right? But the signs that you say, if, for example, I see these signs and I want to report these cases, how then can I go about this? And also, I would also ask, although this is a double-folded question, my producer's going to kill me, but I've realized that oftentimes the victims of sexual abuse or domestic violence are reluctant to seek help, whether from agencies, whether from providers or CSOs or even NGOs. So how then is the agency mitigating that to meet them at the point of their need?
Okay. Let me answer the second question first. So we know that there is a culture of silence, and it's not peculiar to us. It's a global phenomenon, By virtue of the impact domestic violence has on the survivor or the victim, they get to a point where they feel it's normal. There's a lot of victim blaming. There's a lot of trauma bonding. There is a phenomenon referred to as trauma bonding, where the survivor bonds with the source of their trauma. And then, again, I said, we talked about isolation and lack of access to information. Some people are in abusive relationships, they don't even know that they're in abusive relationships because, they've been told domestic violence is only physical, for instance, and perhaps the person is experiencing emotional, verbal stalking or has been forcefully ejected from the home. So it's important. What we're doing as Lagos State government is basically to mainstream gender-based violence into the different sectors. We've mainstreamed it into the health sector, into the education sector, into the security sector, because we're dealing with crimes, right? And crimes are committed against the state. So if a survivor goes to a health facility, a designated health facility, and it can be a primary healthcare center, it can be a general hospital, or the SACs, the sexual assault referral centers, and the survivor presents, and it's possible the survivor can say, oh, I'm experiencing headache. It's not enough for the doctor to just say, oh, let me treat you for headache. It's to probe. What is the source? What is causing this headache? And then most times the survivors actually break the culture of silence and, report. And then because of what we've been able to do with the health sector, such cases are then escalated to us. It's important for us to understand the concerns of some survivors. Some survivors feel that, oh, if I report, jail, the person is going to be prosecuted. But it's important for survivors and everybody to know that there are different ways to help survivors. There are different doors of accessing justice. So for domestic violence, for instance, it's not always that the case must end up in court. It can be addressed through alternative dispute resolution, especially if that's what the survivor wants, right? A good number of survivors tell us they want the beating to stop. They don't want their abuser jailed. They want, perhaps for them to go for counseling, to be able to access support. Or they can say, oh, you know what, for now, I want a separation, but I want the man, to be financially responsible for the children. So it depends on the circumstance and it depends on what they want. And based on what they want, we're able to introduce interventions to suit their specific purposes.
Okay, so I've got concerns for two classes of people here, and I'm wondering what hope for them. First off, people who are experiencing perhaps maybe mental health issues or are just mentally unstable. There have been stats proving that people do take advantage of these class of people. What hope for them? And then the other set of people would be men. Are men popping up in your research as being sexually harassed or abused? And what hope for men who haven't come out to actually tell that they are being harassed or abused? So, and what gives in that instance?
Okay, so survivors who perhaps are persons with disability, or they are experiencing one form of mental health challenge or the other. We approach this from a multidisciplinary lens. In Lagos State government, we have relevant institutions that can address these different issues. So for instance, if it's a child with special needs or a child with special needs or mental health or developmental challenges, we leverage the support of the Ministry of Youth and Social Development, as well as Lagos State Office of Disability Affairs, because those ministries and that agency have the relevant expertise to be able to address this issue. I'll just give an example. So a while back, we had a 10-year-old girl who non-verbal, had auditory impairment, and she couldn't move, so she had physical challenge as well. And the mother just noticed that her daughter's stomach was protruding. And just out of, she took the girl to the hospital and they conducted medical examination and rather test. And it was discovered that she was pregnant. So at that point in time, of course, we had to, refer the case appropriately to the relevant ministry, like the Ministry of Youth and Social Development and Office of Disability Affairs, who got the services of a professional to be able to elicit information from her. And that's how come we're able to identify who the suspect was, who turned out to be a neighbor. So there are measures in place to address, to ensure that persons with disabilities or persons having experiencing one mental health disorder, is able to access support. When it comes to men, yes, last year we provided services to over 333 men who came and reported different forms of violence, domestic violence, physical abuse, emotional, verbal, economic, stalking, harassment, deprivation of access to children, and all of that. So men are actually gradually breaking the culture of silence, and they are speaking up. But what we're doing to address that is we're being proactive. So we've actually come up with interventions to address the male gender. We have our Men with Sabi program. We launched our Hidden Crime Violence Against Men program to just engage the male folk, not just look at the men as all men are perpetrators or all men are abusers, because we realize that men also, can experience or do experience sexual and gender-based violence, and it's important for us to be deliberate as well in addressing their various needs.
And being deliberate to address sexual abuse and domestic violence, one must also look at the judicial system and the laws that are put in place in protecting the victims of this kind of violence and abuse. And to my surprise, the statute of limitation for rape is 2 years? So thank you for that. So help me to correct this. What's the statute of limitation, and what are the laws that are put in place to protect victims?
Yes. No, we don't have statute of limitation anymore. That was in the criminal code in, I think, 1904. But Lagos State, since 2011, we updated our law to the criminal law of Lagos State. It was amended in 2015. Currently undergoing further amendments. And I also know that the act applicable that was enacted by the National Assembly has also been recently amended to expunge the statute of limitation. But what we just encourage is that for survivors, to speak up early. When they speak up early, they're able to access critical services such as medical intervention, and they were also able to collect and preserve evidence, which is critical in ensuring we're able to secure convictions. When we talk about legislative framework for address SGBV, we have various provisions. We have various enactments. We have the criminal law of Lagos State, as I spoke to just recently. In the law, we have the offense of defilement provided for in section 137. We have the offense of rape, 260, offense of sexual assault by penetration, 261, attempt. You attempt to commit the offense of rape or sexual assault, that's in 262, it's a crime. You have 263, which is a sexual assault. You have sexual harassment, 264, and then 265, causing a person to engage in sexual activity. Now, defilement, rape, sexual assault by penetration, all attract up to life imprisonment. Attempt is 14 years. Sexual assault, sexual harassment is 3 years. And then causing a person to engage in sexual activity without their consent is 5 years. When it comes to domestic violence, we have the Protection Against Domestic Violence Law, 2007, amended in 2015. The major aim of that law basically is to prevent further reoccurrence of domestic violence. And how it does that is encouraging survivors to approach the court and obtain what is called a restraining or a protection order. So the order, based on the evidence adduced before the court will give an order restraining the alleged abuser from, coming near the survivor or going to their place of work. And then other ancillary orders can be made, such as maintenance, provision of accommodation, and it can even go as far as awarding custody if there are children involved. So we have the domestic violence law.
Right.
The Domestic and Sexual Violence Agency law introduced some new sections, and permit me to just mention one particular section,
Okay.
which is
Quick,
section
please.
30 of the law, which prohibits concealment of sexual offenses. So there are certain individuals that are mentioned in that section: parents, caregivers, religious clerics, school administrators. They have a duty to report sexual offenses, and if they conceal it, they can be criminally liable for up to 3 years imprisonment.
Now, Titilola, we're pressed for time. I'm watching this. I've been sexually abused, or I'm experiencing domestic violence, or I know somebody that is sexually abused or experiencing domestic violence. What do I need to do? Very quickly.
Speak up. Speak up.
Who do
You
I
need
go
speak
to?
up. You can reach out to us on our toll-free line, 08000 333 08000 333. For social media, you can send us a DM at Lagos DSVA, or you can visit us in our office located in Central Business District. But if you want to reach out, the fastest way is actually through our toll-free line, 08000 333 333.
Titilola, many thanks for doing this with us. We appreciate you for coming on, and thank you so much for all the hard work you do at your agency there. Many thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.